I would like to welcome the honored guests, the distinguished guests, the distinguished essay writers and their families, and other friends of the organization, and of course, board members who are here. This is a very rewarding event for us, and that's why we're willing to put a little bit of time and effort into reading what turns out to be some pretty wonderful essays, and you'll be hearing about them a little bit later. I wanted also to thank the donors and sponsors of our various fundraisers, and also donors to our annual fund, because it's that money that makes it possible for us to have an essay contest and to have other events that help fulfill our mission, which is to foster greater cross-cultural understanding and appreciation of the rich culture and history of both the U.S. and Russia. And we feel the essay contests do this, and the fact that they are as successful as they are is that they have a research component. And having done the research and with what they learn, the essay writers then are able to give some very thoughtful writing to whatever the topic may happen to be. And I think they achieve a more nuanced sense of the history and culture and its richness of each country. This year we're very happy that our partners in Tula are also having students write essays, and I've seen some of them, and they are equally wonderful and interesting to read. We find in the process every year that we gain new information and new insights and concepts that perhaps we hadn't thought of before, and that comes out of the really excellent research and the thought that the young people have brought to bear, and this is our reward for running the contests. Shortly, as I said, we will hear from each essay writer in alphabetical order, who will just say a couple of words about how he or she reacted and what his or her response is to the Mandela quote. And Nelson Mandela said, "If you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you talk to him in his own language, that goes to his heart." And that made some very thoughtful answers. And I'm going to call now to come forward Adam Aleksic.
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the Albany Tool Alliance for hosting this event. I approached Mandela's quote both literally and figuratively, and wrote my essay on ways we can improve English as a foreign language instruction for Russian students. Through my research, I found that they work better in groups with cross-cultural components to instruction and with more context-based learning. Currently, educational standards are flawed with poor textbook writing, too much emphasis on American teaching styles, and failure to recognize Russian English as a separate dialect of the language. If we do as Mandela urges, we can help overcome these shortcomings by treating these students with the respect and instruction they deserve. Thank you.
Anna Boggess.
So being a Russian American, I had fun researching the relationship that U.S. has with Russia, as well as sort of really digging into Nelson Mandela's background and his firm belief that the importance of language has on dealing or interacting with people of different cultural and social backgrounds. And I also used my argument by researching academic articles. One of them talked about the foreign language effect and how students were found to make better decisions when using their second language instead of their first. And altogether, this was a great experience writing this essay, and I'd like to thank the Albany Tool Alliance.
Amelia Colafati.
Good afternoon. So first and foremost, I would like to thank everyone who made this incredible opportunity possible for me. It's really incredible to earn any money for college in these days. So I've spent my elementary school years in a dual language program in both English and Spanish, and so I approached the Nelson Mandela quote as sort of speaking as a testimonial to the importance of speaking in speaking in foreign languages and not only your primary language, and not relying on a lingua franca or a language that sort of unites the entire globe, especially in foreign relations. I also touched on the reasoning in my essay behind learning foreign languages and the benefits of bilingualism in international exchange and discussion, especially pertaining to those communications between Russia and the United States. Thank you.
NITHYA, CHOCKALINGAM.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nelson Mandela once said, if you talk to a man in a language he understands, it goes to his head. If you talk to a man in his own language, that goes to his heart. In other words, people are more emotionally connected, prone to making the right decisions, and are successful when they're speaking in their native languages rather than a foreign or second language which they only understand. Mandela's quote also emphasizes the people to continually speak in their mother tongue language as well as to learn other foreign languages. Mandela's words are significant and relevant to this day, especially in developed countries like the United States and Russia. Russia and the United States are ethnically diverse nations. In the United States, immigration drives the linguistic diversity. However, the American paradox is that despite the high immigration rate of the United States leading to the enrichment of linguistic diversity, there has also been the zone of language extinction in which immigrant languages become endangered and are replaced by the monolingual English. In contrast, the most populous ethnic group in Russian are able to speak in their native language, which is Russian. Mandela's quote can be applied to the United States and Russia because of the varying linguistic conditions that both regions face, which contributed to their positive and negatives when it comes to culture and education. Thank you.
MAXIM GOTTLIEB.
Hello, everybody. I would like to just give a very quick thank you to the Albany Tula Alliance for giving this opportunity to write and find out a little bit more about the place I was born and the relation it has with where I am now. Thank you.
ADELAIDE LEUNG.
I believe that the lack of understanding between Russia and the United States stems from the inability of each country to thoroughly understand the differences of each culture and to dissipate the begrudging attitude towards bridging the gap between cultural diversity of these two countries. But how do we fix this problem? So there are three aspects that I wrote about. The first is that in 2004, there was a measure by the World Bank that showed that the United States produced 16.49 metric tons of carbon dioxide, with Russia ranking as a close second with 11.86 metric tons. So this shows that the US and Russia are the two biggest greenhouse gas emitters. Because Russia and the United States alliance is strained, it would be best to start with small projects first to build up trust as well as improve the environment. The second point that I have is that in psychology, humans have a carnal desire to be accepted and to feel special. By capitalizing on a viewpoint in which every delegate in, for example, a negotiation can relate to, the situation is automatically personalized for each individual and will result in something called an individualized bias. The development of an individualized bias will therefore lead to easier acceptance of the terms of a proposal, but never complete acceptance. The third thing is that the mannerisms and the language of another culture have to be learned as well. It is clear that the United States has not taken the time to learn any sliver of the Russian language, but the Russians have learned English because it is a universal language, which is a component that could be potentially indicative of a lack of effort for reconciliation between US and Russia. Using these three factors, we can begin to take steps in changing the barrier that Russia has against us and hopefully form an alliance again in the future. Thank you.
Rebecca Moore.
I took my approach a little differently. I used language, but I went with the more broader definition of the terminology of a particular domain. So I went back in time and I studied the Cold War, which has three different languages: communism, capitalism, and compassion. Both sides, the Soviets, and the U.S. understood what communism and capitalism were because they spoke these languages along with each other and their politics. But eventually the war ended when they both started speaking the same language, the one they both understood, compassion, which is the human language.
I think you get a sense of why it is so interesting to read these essays and to think of the positive thoughts and constructive ideas that the young people have for furthering improved relations. And we know from past experience when our funds have permitted us to actually have reciprocal visits to the two cities. We know that visiting each other's country is a life-changing experience. And the essay contest is the next best thing we can do, I think, for that very purpose. Now I would like to announce the 3 winners, and I want to tell you it was not easy to arrive at this conclusion. In 3rd place, we would like to welcome Aleksic. In 2nd place, Amelia Colafati. In 1st place, Anna Boggess.